Hi, this is my little documentary I've decided I'm going to impromptu make. I have been great friends with someone who has been talking about the E.P.A. project, the Superfund project in Niagara County and in Newfane, New York, Lockport, New York. I haven't talked much on it, unfortunately, but I am going to come down, damn motorcycle, I'm going to document this, and I hope to go on the tour of the site and document that too, as a way to kind of just share the information, as I think it's very important that the community knows, and I want to make sure that information is readily available. I'm going to try to document as much stuff on that end as I'm here, just for general information. I want to make sure people have the facts they need, and generally it seems like we're being accountable and transparent, and I'm glad about that. That's what I was concerned about when I came down here, so yeah. This is 18 Mile Creek. Also, it's only 15 miles long, but down at the Newfane Town Hall, they had put together this display. A part of my little video I'm doing with this, I wanted to make sure I'm properly documenting this. I'm going to try to talk to who I can talk to about that, but a lot of people are, they aren't allowed to because they don't have approval from the press office, which is okay. I didn't realize that was something I was going to run into, but I'm still learning. But, yeah, this is just kind of a diagram for the 18 Mile Creek, where it runs, that it starts in Lockport, I believe, and it runs all the way through here up to Lake Ontario.
So we're looking at a bird's eye view of the entire 18 Mile Creek Fund site. It's broken up down here in what they call OUs, or operational units. And this call out here is for OU1 and OU2 and OU4, which is in the city of Lockport. Then as you move northward towards Lake Ontario and towards Newfane, we'll walk over here because this section right here into the lake, we are looking at the bird's eye view. Now we're going to come down to sort of the at grade view here. So this is that on its side, on its horizontal. And this is a good demonstration of the depth and the breadth of where positive contamination was identified a couple of years ago, and as a result the EPA has decided to properly remediate this, as well as it's going to be the last phase of the remediation work, because it's the lowest part gravitationally to where it discharges out into Lake Ontario.
Okay, thank you. What is your name again?
I'm Carla Speranza.
Okay.
I'm the Niagara County Legislator for District
Okay.
12.
Well, thank you for explaining. For those that don't quite understand the EPA's, how they function and all that, what is an operational unit? What's an operable unit?
Think about an operational unit as a zone.
A
right?
zone,
So
okay.
You've got a whole geographic area, and then they've broken it up into subunits, or zones, if you will. So, operable unit 1, and then each operable unit has certain criteria that it has to meet, and it's usually in a similar, a closer, smaller geography, and the conditions are very similar in that operational unit. So obviously this operational unit is very different because we are radically moving downhill, and we actually have a much greater depth that they have to tackle. Whereas these are the upstream areas. Some of these are more residential than others. Some of these are formerly industrial or mixed industrial and residential areas.
Okay. Thank you for the explanation for people. I appreciate it, and thank you. That's all I really got to say.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. Alright, so I'm going to start at Operable Unit 1, and I'm going to go through and explain and kind of read off each one for everyone. But the EPA found elevated concentrations of lead and polychlorinated biphenyl, sorry if I mispronounced those, also referred to as PCBs, in the soil at residential properties along Water Street and former Flint Coat plant building. Water Street properties, EPA conducted a temporary action at the properties to mitigate the threat to current residents of direct contact with contaminated soil. This action included placing gravel or clean topsoil with vegetation in areas where residents may come into direct contact with the soil. EPA acquired 6 privately owned residential properties on Water Street and permanently relocated property owners and tenants of those properties. EPA demolished 5 residential structures, 99, 113, 117, 127, and 142 Water Street, and installed security. EPA will remove contaminated PCBs, lead, and chromium at the properties on Water Street. And this is the former Flintcoat plant building. EPA demolished and disposed of the contaminated building at former Flintcoat plant property located on 300 Mill Street. This is operable unit 2. So remember, when we're talking about operable units, we're talking about kind of the zone that they're working in. That's the fancy term here. EPA's cleanup approach includes constructing access roads, removing and disposing of contaminated soil at the former United Paperboard, White Transportation, and Upson Park properties, adding clean fill to the excavated areas, placement of a cover system, removing contaminated sediment in the creek, followed by backfilling with clean fill, removing the Clinton and William Street dams, restoring the creek banks, and long-term monitoring. Tasks the tasks completed to date include EPA excavated contaminated soil from the White Transportation parcel. EPA removed contaminated sediment and backfilled with clean material in the east branch of the creek. EPA excavated contaminated soil along the creek bank at Upson Park. EPA installed a bypass system to divert water flow to support the removal of creek sediment in dry conditions. EPA removed sediment in the west branch of the creek. EPA installed a pumping system to divert flow around the work area. And these were all completed during June 2025, July, February, May, and July. As you can see right here, little out view for everyone to see. This is another panel on operable unit 2. So this is a work in progress, what they're talking about. EPA will remove Clinton Street dam sediment from within the creek channel and restore flow through the corridor. United Paperboard parcel cleanup will include the removal of contaminated soil, off-site disposal, removal of the contaminated soil. Oh, I accidentally repeated that. Apologies about that. Upland soils and bank-to-bank creek sediment removal in the OU2 corridor, including along Water Street. EPA will remove the William Street Dam and contaminated sediment to improve hydraulic conditions within the creek corridor. So if I know what that means coherently, what they're basically saying there is that they're going to remove those things to increase the flow of the water, if I am reading that correctly. Excavate contaminated soil from the former Flintcoat property in Mill Race Island. Conduct archaeological monitoring in the southern Mill Race Island, William Street area during soil work. Scheduled to be completed in 2028. Operable Unit 3, Remedial Design. EPA is addressing the contaminated sediment and floodplain soil impacted in the portion of the creek referred to as the Sediment Transition Area, STA, beginning in Harvard Street. I totally butchered that name. I apologize about that. And extending downstream for about 5.3 miles. The selected remedy includes the following: excavation to remedial action levels, long-term monitoring, and institutional controls for creek sediment and excavation and off-site disposal for the floodplain soils. EPA is currently designing the cleanup for this portion of the site. Over the next several months, EPA will coordinate with property owners to obtain access to conduct the pre-design investigation. Beginning fall 2026, EPA will inspect the surrounding area to identify site features, access routes, document site conditions, identify the site boundaries, and more. Sample sediment and floodplain soil to identify the type and extent of contamination and restore areas impacted by investigation efforts. Again, this is the third operable unit zone, or kind of like the zone that they're cleaning up, and I think we have 2 more to go. Operable Unit 3, Residential Lead Contaminated Soil. EPA selected a cleanup plan for OU4 in 2018 ROD, which called no lead concentration equal to or greater than 400 parts per million ppm, which is a way of measuring the dissolution. I actually already knew of that term from previous experiences at jobs, but that is kind of like the dissolution. So like if you put a drop of soap in water, the parts per million is how strong that soap is still in that water. It's the dissolution of the product, we'll say, or the concentrate in that body of water, in that bottle of water, whatever. So that's what parts per million means. And or an average soil concentration across each residential property at or below 200 parts per million. So again, they're basically saying it has to be this amount of strength within those containers, or this amount of dissolution in those containers. EPA began removing lead-contaminated soil from 33 residential properties in 2024 and expects the work to be done by 2027. EPA finishing designing the cleanup approach to remove lead-contaminated soil from an additional 42 residential properties in 2025. EPA plans to begin removing the lead-contaminated soil in 2027. EPA is currently sampling soil at additional properties and develop the cleanup approach to remove lead-contaminated soil from additional residential properties. So I'm also going to read just the health and safety precautions to you. Particulate dust monitoring stations set up around excavations areas, dust suppression efforts with water misting trucks, covering the soil stockpile and cover trucks disposing of non-hazardous soil, and covered trucks transporting clean common fill. They also have this diagram here, just so you know which areas they're doing of Operable Unit 4 or Zone 4. So here is the first one, which I think is just a regular map showing. Then you have, oh, I see how this is set up. Okay, so this is more colored with the full colors. This is a full schematics. Now here's just Phase 2 properties. It's telling you which Phase 2 properties are doing. And then over here is just properties not sampled yet. So like full diagram, and then this is everything together, including exceeding the RAOs, Phase 2, and doesn't look like we have the not sampled yet properties here, but we do have tax parcels, and we do have the green, which is actually not exceeding the RAOs. So I had missed that in my original explanation. Phase 2 and Phase 1, tax parcels again, and then the ones not sampled. That's what this little diagram is here. That's what it's displaying and explaining. Operable Unit 5, this is the newest and the most recent one. Remaining portion of the creek and floodplain soil. EPA is identifying data gaps, including the nature and extent of floodplain soil, sediment, surface water, and fish tissue contamination within these remaining areas. EPA is identifying the characteristics of the sediment bed behind the Newfane and Burt dams. EPA is looking at the impacts from having addressed the source areas. Sampling is scheduled to start in August/September 2026 and continue through fall of 2027. EPA will issue a proposed cleanup plan after its investigations of this portion of the site. Now again, there's a fish consumption advisory, don't eat too much fish, blah, 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 be safe about that, link's right there. A little bit of information on just how they get involved with this kind of stuff and kind of know about it. Just want to get this over here. And yeah, I'm not going to read it all if my voice is kind of dying, but yeah, I'll probably have some afterthoughts or after things I'll read off and just kind of explain, but thank you. So this is the next day after the EPA meeting. I'm recording this. I wanted to read off the little flyer we got. It's a little beat up because I'm a biker and stuff like that happens. But I'm going to read it off just so you have the last bit of information, because I read all the diagrams. We had a representative of Niagara County actually do that on video, surprising. She offered to do it, and I was like, heck yeah. Respect the heck out of that. I think it was Carla Sopranza, if I have the right name. So thank her for that, first off. Just a day afterwards, I still think that was awesome. And I'm going to record it. I'm going to read it off to you. 18 Mile Creek Superfund Site, Lockport, New York. So keep in mind, this creek spans from Lockport to Newfane. And it's actually 15 miles, not 18 miles. Cleanup activities. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency finished removing the contaminated soil and sediment in the East Branch, as well as soil along and adjacent to the steep banks within Upson Park, and is currently removing contaminated sediment in the West Branch of 18 Mile Creek south of Clinton Street. When the work in the area between the New York State Barge Canal and Clinton Street is done, EPA will continue moving north in the creek. EPA will finish cleaning up the 34 residential properties near the former Flynn Coat plant by the end of this year. EPA will also investigate and clean up various additional portions of the Superfund site this spring. The ongoing cleanup of the site is very complex. Due to the complexity, EPA is addressing the 18-Mile Creek Superfund site in 5 parts, called operable units, also referred to as OUs. Please see figure 1. So again, remember, when we're talking operable units, we are talking zone. So this is like the zone that they're working in, or operable unit. Just, again, reciting that from yesterday. I know I said that a couple of times, but just making sure we're still clear on that. Operable Unit 1, which if you remember the diagram for earlier in this video, because I think I'm placing this at the end, then that is the area we're talking about here. EPA is addressing the risks associated with the residential soil contamination at 9 residential properties located on Water Street and the threats posed from the deteriorating building at the Flint Coat property. EPA previously relocated several residents from their homes along Water Street. Following the relocations, EPA demolished and the residential properties. EPA will remove contaminated soil from the areas where the homes were demolished during the cleanup for OU2 work to prevent recontamination. So basically, a fancy way, what they're saying here is, okay, we have area 1, we're going to address the concerns of this building that's still deteriorating and can contaminate more areas. We're going to keep working on the soil, and we're going to make sure we don't recontaminate things. It's basically fancy talk of what we're talking about here. In a nutshell, a little more complex, but if I was to simplify it, make it a little easier for understanding. Operable Unit 2, or Zone 2, as we were talking about further in the EPA little diagrams. EPA is addressing an approximate 4,000-foot segment of 18-Mile Creek that extends from the New York State Barge Canal to Harvard Street, referred to as the Creek Corridor. EPA finished removing contaminated soil and sediment in the east branch of the creek and is working on restoring the upland soil and wetland areas. EPA also finished removing contaminated soil along the banks in Upson Park in January 2026 and is currently removing the contaminated sediment in the West Branch. The agency finished building a temporary wastewater treatment plant and sediment processing area at the former Flint Coat property. EPA is almost done creating a large trench and placing an underground pipe to divert water from the creek during excavation. EPA will remove 2 unpermitted and dilapidated dams at Clinton and William Streets. The work will proceed north of the creek towards Harvard Street and include the floodplain soil as the project advances. So if I can see on the diagram, I do want to show a little bit more of Harvard Street on this little recording I'm doing after the fact. I believe, if I'm correct, I'm trying to take a little idea. I think we're talking East Branch and West Branch here. I know the diagram's early in the video. It's probably hard to see here. I think that's what we're talking about here, if I remember correctly. It's been a while. I'm actually a big fan of science, but it's been a while since I've had to work with something so scientifically written. Is I guess the word I'm going to call it. It looks like also with operable unit 2, we're talking about State Barge Canal. If I can find it real quick in the diagram, which it doesn't look like I can. God dang it. Trying to take a little peek through. Yeah, it doesn't look like I can. Oh, wait, there we go. Okay, I think I just found it, actually. No, that's not it. Okay, I'm not exactly sure, unfortunately. It's a little hard to see on this diagram, but I know that they had the bigger pictures, and I think I took pictures of the diagrams, too, for people to actually look at, so I know I'll be posting that. Maybe I'll post it to YouTube, because I know that's where this is going. I don't typically post things to YouTube anymore, just videos, but I don't really do post, because it's like, YouTube wasn't designed for that. But anyways, there is a back. I'll keep reading that now. We're going to talk about operable unit 3, 4, and 5. Again, 18-Mile Creek, Superfund site. This is going from Lockport, New York, all the way up to Lake Ontario, if I remember correctly. Yes, Lake Ontario. Wanted to make sure I had the right body of water, because they all are named different in different locations. Operable Unit 3. EPA is addressing the contaminated sediment and floodplain soil impacted in a portion of the creek referred to as the sediment transition area. EPA is currently designing the cleanup for this part of the creek beginning on Harvard Street and extending downstream for about 5.3 miles. Over the next several months, EPA will coordinate with property owners to obtain access for further sampling and other activities to support the development of the design. The design provides detailed specifications for the performance of the cleanup. So I do want to talk a little bit on this, since I guess I'm documenting this now, which was a rather impromptu decision. When I go on the tour that I was invited to go on with my friend Cindy Bugalo, I think her last name is, I had the wrong last name. My plan is to also try to get like just a sample of the agreement, because from what I understand, legally you have to get consent of the property owner in order to test their soil. I had a rough explanation of it, but if I can get the actual agreement, I'd like to show that on camera just for people to understand what it is. I do also, I guess I was explained to that the Niagara town or falls, I wasn't sure which one it was, had a clause in there that wasn't liked. I am going to say my information on this is very vague. It's very little. I don't know much, so I don't want to speak on it much. However, there was something in there that apparently was just a mistake. I'm going to say do your research and take what I say is 50-50 on that one from what I know. But I do know that when I go for that tour, because I was told I could tour the Superfund site with the proper safety measures and actually video and like record it like a proper documentary, I will do that. And I will see if I can get like my hands on one of the agreements, because I would like to show what that looks like, what it says, and get a proper explanation on that. Another thing I also want to explain as a side note, just to be transparent, one of the reasons you don't see any of the EPA people in this is that they actually technically need confirmation from the press office to do anything, and since I kind of just impromptu did it, they couldn't be in the video. I did ask them originally, but that's why. Feel how you feel on that. That's just bureaucratic policy on that one, so I'm not touching that one. However, I will say they were very honest with everything they were showing, at least it seems. Gonna keep going now. Operable Unit 4. EPA is addressing lead-contaminated soil at residential properties located near the former Flint Coat property. EPA expects to begin cleaning up the next group of 42 residential properties in 2027. In addition, EPA continues to sample residential properties in the area to define the extent of contamination. I do want to note something on this too, because there were some concerns, but I did get the answers to this from other people who asked great questions, because I'm kind of coming into this just to learn and provide that information for people. Cindy Bugalo is leading the charge. I'm just trying to help out and kind of keep people educated, which is what we want. We want the information, the transparency, which is what we're getting, and that's good. They are using containers. So from what I understand, there's certain containers you need for lead contaminated soil that will stop it from being more dangerous and contaminating more things. They are properly using this. And the unsealed trucks, from what I understand, I think it was not contaminated soil. From what I was explained, like I know it was not, it was either clean fill or not contaminated soil, but I believe it was not contaminated soil. So we're good on that end. It was being done properly, from what I understand. If I'm wrong, correct me, and I will come out and say I'm wrong. I'd rather be corrected on that than not, because the information is important here, and that's the point of making this video. So even on that end too. From what I understand too, is the reason it's taking so long is going to come down to funding. As one person there was actually on the Lockport Common Council originally when a plan was brought forth. There was a really good plan, and apparently that plan's mostly being followed from what I understood and could perceive. But the reason it's taking so long, you're seeing like 2027, 2028, is because of cuts of federal funding. So that's a separate debate I could go down. I'm not going to get into it in this video, but this is why you want to support funding to governmental agencies to a degree. Because most of the time, then when it's cut, you have stuff like this. So I want people who are confused by that, or people who understand that, to remember one line that I've always loved. All politics is local. So anyways, we're going to continue reading this. Operable Unit 5. EPA is addressing the remainder of the creek and floodplain soil, which is located from the downstream of the sediment transition area to the creek's discharge at Lake Ontario. This portion of the creek includes two holding areas where sediment is stored upstream of Newfane Dam and Burt Dam. EPA will sample in this area as part of its investigation in late 2026 and 2027. So, from what I understand about Operable Unit 5, it was the newest to be added after they found more contamination. But I guess it's the one I remember not having as much information on, but yes. Now, I will say information repositories are where you can find more information on this. U.S. EPA Superfund Records Center, Lockport Public Library, and Newfane Public Library. So if you're in the Newfane or the Lockport, New York area, this is where you can find information on this. As this is being made more for those people, but let's say someone just got bored and wanted to watch it, there you go. Hopefully this inspires you to get involved in whatever community you're in. Fish advisories, of course, I'm not going to read that fully out because I'm done reading fancy stuff. But if you're consuming fish from 18 Mile, be careful of how often, how long. Don't be dangerous. Don't do stupid things, as I like to say. There's one last thing I want to do since this is going to be the ending of probably this little vlogumentary I impromptu did. I would like to say I do appreciate the EPA finally doing what we've been asking them. Cindy Boogaloo has been making a great point, being called like the Lower Town watchdog. I think she nicknamed herself Pitbull too, which I freaking love. That's the kind of energy we need to be bringing back to communities, taking charge, taking lead, and bettering the community. I would like to thank the EPA for being transparent. I had doubts going into it. I had a whole speech written up, like I was ready to get into it, but they actually did what we wanted. Like, we've been asking them to do this. So on that end, I want to say thank you to the EPA. And I say that because that pleasantry has been earned. I want to also say on that end that any governmental agency built for protection or environmental protection or any civil service of that kind, I want people to remember that they are a civil servant. Their servitude is civil. It means it's for the community. So this is what they should be doing. And we're going to thank them for that because we still need to remember our manners. But when a governmental agency doesn't do that, call them out. That is their job. The entire point of government is not power. For some reason, we've gotten that mixed up. It is to protect people. And if we need to protect people, then we need government. I'm not one to say that I am pro-establishment. I'm pro-community. And if there's going to be an establishment, the establishment must work for the community. Hence, why civil service is civil service. So that's what this said. Thank you for watching. I'm going to try to include some links down below on more information on the Superfund site, 18 Mile, maybe some news articles I can find. Going forth, I'll try to cover this a little bit more as I can. I'd like to state I'm not a professional at this. I'm doing this because I feel it's right, because people need to know. I'm not a professional. I'm not a journalist. I'm coming into it simply wanting to give the information. But I hope it was informative. I hope if I make more stuff like this, I hope it stays informative. I'm going to make a Lockport playlist for everything like this because I seem to be getting way more involved video-wise with this. And yeah, thank you for watching. I'm not going to tell you to subscribe. Instead, I'm going to tell you go read down below and get involved if you're in the Lockport community, if you're in the Newfane community, even if you're in the surrounding areas of 18 Mile Creek. And the other thing I'm going to say is if you're not in those areas or local to this region that I'm talking about, take this as your note to get involved. I doubt you probably watched this far in, but if you did, thank you. Get involved in community. It's why it's important, because we have been asking for this for a while, and we finally got the transparency and the honesty we've demanded. And that is what you should do. Demand transparency when something's going on in your community. It is your community. The government works for you, not the other way around. That is how it goes. And if they do not work for you, they do not deserve to be your government. As simple as that. So again, thank you, EPA. Go read down below if you want. Take this as your notion to try to be involved in your community, whether it's local or not. To me, at least, Lockport, Newfane, all that. And thank you. I don't know what more to say, but thank you.